Welcome, everyone, and thank you for attending our Educator Connection live series. We are so excited that you decided to join us today. We have a full house and an incredible lineup for you. My name is Muna Algaithi, and I will be the lead facilitator today. I am the Education Engagement Specialist with PBS Wisconsin. And moderating, we have my colleague, Kristen Legler, who will be moderating the chat. So as we go through the presentation today, if you have any questions or comments or connections, you can enter them there and we will do our best to make sure that we respond. I want to start off by mentioning, it is critical to mention that myself and those on the webinar are not mental health experts. And if you or someone you care about is struggling with mental health, please look for more information hotline or texting help to 741-741. About a quarter of Wisconsin high school students said they've experienced symptoms of depression in the last year. 16% said they'd seriously considered suicide, and 8% said that they had attempted it. Less than a third of those surveyed Wisconsin students who had felt sad, empty, hopeless, angry, or anxious said they could usually get the help they needed or that they'd most likely talk with a parent or adult family member about it. Every year, May is Mental Health Month. However, with the uncertainties and impact of COVID-19, it's an especially important topic to understand. We thought we'd use this time to discuss the mental health of those who we care about, the youth, who for the purpose of this webinar are anyone from pre-K through high school. A recent NPR article argued that students need counselors now more than ever before. Between closed schools, social isolation, food scarcity, and parental unemployment, the coronavirus pandemic has so destabilized kids' support systems that the result, counselors say, is genuinely traumatic. This is especially true for families who were already struggling before the coronavirus took the world by a storm, and for so many of those children where school was their only place of safety. While younger students are missing their peers, older students are experiencing grief over what they've lost, such as prom and graduation. So, what is mental illness? What do symptoms of some of the most common mental illnesses look like? What are some resources that you can use to advocate for your students?
Muna?
Yes? Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to turn, you're doing such an awesome job. I'm going to also ask you to turn your video off. I'm having a difficult time hearing you. I have a very slow connection and a message on my screen that reads slow connection. So
Okay.
Thank you for doing that.
No problem. What do symptoms of some of the most common illnesses look like? What are some resources that you can use to advocate for your students, understand on a deeper level what some of them may be experiencing, or even incorporate those lessons into your virtual classrooms? That is what we are going to dive into using for today's webinar. Before we dive in, I invite you to reflect on this prompt. What expectations of normal are you letting go of today? If you would like to write out your response, feel free to do so in the chat box now.
I'm seeing a schedule, hot meals, being able to communicate freely with students, Jackie Stapleton writes, our schedule is way off. I completely understand that, Jackie.
Scotty wrote, any standards of beauty have long been thrown out the window while we stay home.
Max productivity.
Going out to eat, connection. I'd like to affirm that even by showing up today, you are demonstrating the care that you for yourself and for those around you. Be proud of yourselves. We are surviving these unprecedented times together. Mr. Rogers said, when I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. Each and every one of you is a helper, and I thank you for being here with us today. Let's dive in and hear from some of our award-winning helpers. I am so excited to introduce to you my colleagues at Milwaukee PBS, Maryann and Scotty, and they are the producers of the Emmy-award winning film, Kids in Crisis, You're Not Alone. The documentary follows 4 young people from Wisconsin navigating mental health challenges. They've endured assault, bullying, incarceration, and discrimination. Some thought about suicide, but through the pain, they found support from family, friends, and strangers. They found the strength within themselves. They're sharing their stories to let others know they're not alone and that healing is possible. Here's a clip to give you a taste of the documentary.
People thought I was a monster. I was born addicted to heroin. When I was only 3, that I was sexually assaulted.
I'm being bullied for my autism at school. I was being bullied for it. They would say I'm ugly, I'm stupid, I'm a nerd, I'm a dork. I wrote a goodbye note when I was 7 years old. The first time the suicide idea popped into my head was in middle school. Being isolated definitely led to a lot of depression, and it just made me very anxious to be different. I heard the whispers behind me. It was hard to walk down the hallways alone. I did it all day, every day.
I think a lot of trans students especially suffer from so much mental health because it's not always an open place in schools to be who you are. It adds another layer of difficulty if you're kind of going through something that not a lot of people understand. I'm TJ Esser, and as a transgender person, I've experienced anxiety because society has tried to make me someone I'm not.
I'm Reina Saldana, and I've experienced depression, bipolar disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder.
My name is Alex Hartwell-Pendo, and I dealt with bullying.
My name's Barrett Petker. I live with depression, anxiety, and obsessive compulsive disorder.
We're here
To tell you
That you're not
Alone.
Hi. When someone looks at you with that look of what's wrong with you, that just would eat me alive.
While being trans itself is not a mental illness, the way that society treats trans people can cause mental illness in the trans community to be higher.
You don't get to show your feelings and be weak that often without people feeling like this is a chance for them maybe to see what you're about.
To the world, we may be one person, but to one person, we may be the world. Thank you.
I'm like amazed of the courage that you guys have to like be where you are. And I was just kind of wondering like how long it took for you to get to that point from when you felt like you were kind of at like your worst point.
It just started with me like being able to tell like a small group of people, and then like that small group of people kept building, and I kept telling more small groups of people, and it made like big groups of people, and then like eventually like I just feel comfortable enough being able to talk to everybody.
And I just kind of had to remember that everybody's learning along with me, and it's not just about me, it's about everybody around me. And so once you get to that point where you accept that the only person thinking the way that you are about yourself is you, and you can kind of like move past that and kind of not get so worried about everybody else being so obsessed with the way that you are, and it's mostly just you being obsessed with the way you are.
Like when you hear other people's stories, and like you're not the only person going through it, like it makes you feel different because like the same things you were going through, I was going through the same things, and I still am. Like I have a hard time dealing with going to school every day because like I get called ugly like every day, or it's like the popular kids in your face are saying you're gay or you're ugly, and it's not true, but you don't know how not to believe it or how not to think it's true.
I just think it's really important that like you being able to hear that you're not alone, like whether or not like, you know, you when you're talking to a group of people, you don't really know like who's taking it in and who like what hits home for certain people. But like I think it's like really like awesome that you like are able to like relate to what we're saying.
So that was just to get up the film, and now we'll hear from the producers. So Maryann, Scotty, feel free to unmute yourselves, and we'll start off with the question, what inspired the creation of this film?
Scotty, go ahead and take that, because Scotty's the one who got the initial phone call that led to this.
Yeah, hi everyone. Scotty Meyers here, multimedia producer with Milwaukee PBS. This film was really born out of a newspaper series started by reporter Rory Linnane, who was at the time filing stories for the Gannett in Appleton, has since moved to the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Her series is pretty well known and has got national attention. It's called Kids in Crisis, and she's been filing stories about many things. Her and I were colleagues back in the day, and she reached out to me and she said, you know, I do all this incredible reporting, and it would be such a valuable tool if we made it into a video and a documentary that can help educators across the country talk about mental health challenges. And we found that this has been, there's a strong appetite to talk about these things, but it's a difficult topic and we don't know how to do it. And so we just hope that this is a tool for everyone.
Thank you. What is something that you learned about youth mental health during production?
Well, one of the things that we learned was that it was important to listen to the young people. And so one of the main things that we all agreed on was we were going to produce this documentary with these 4 young people telling their stories, because studies have shown that peer-to-peer is really important. So rather than cloud the documentary with some other voice and narration, we wanted just mostly to listen to young people and have them talk to other young people. So, you know, that was a lesson. We learned a lot that, you know, there are a lot of kids who are suffering, but like you mentioned, the helpers with Mr. Rogers, there are also a lot of people and programs out there to help. The main thing is that young people just have to start talking. And I think it was Barrett in the documentary who said, just talk to somebody, whether it's a friend or a family member, a counselor, school counselor, just start talking, because that's going to be really helpful.
And one other thing I'd like to add to that real quickly is that it's really hard to do this the right way and be proactive. I think anecdotally we had found that schools aren't so prepared to. Too often is the case is that there's a high-profile incident at a school, perhaps a suicide, tragically, and then school administrators and parents and the community come together and say, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. What do we do now? And it's sort of a reaction as opposed to coming on the front end of things and really putting in a system and a plan in place to prevent these kinds of things. So I think there are some shortfalls out there. Hopefully this will raise awareness.
Thank you.
Muna, I'm going to jump in. There's been a question about a discussion guide. And so I did type a URL in the chat box where you can find a toolbox. And that URL is jsonline.com/you're not alone. And your is spelled Y-O-U-R-E. There's no apostrophe. You can find that in the chat.
Yeah, Kristen, that's a good segue into some of that last question there, which is, what can educators take away from this film? And it's important that you know that we really designed this with you in mind. That link that was just given to you is a toolkit. And there you'll find additional short videos that weren't necessarily featured in the documentary. They're centered around different topics like stress and coping and tips for loved ones and talking about suicide and LGBTQ considerations and a whole list of resources. You can also find the full doc there. You can request a free copy of the documentary there. There's also discussion questions under each category. And so this is really meant to be sort of a curriculum for folks who want to continue the conversation and have a dialogue about this sensitive material.
Thank you both.
And I know we're running out of time, but I quickly want to mention that our documentary, we're really proud of the fact that it's helping so many people, young people, but we were, because of this documentary, we have 2 new laws in the state of Wisconsin. Back in February, the governor signed a bill into law providing grant funding for peer-to-peer suicide prevention programs, and we showcased one in our documentary. It's called Red Gen, but now there's some funding available. And then in March, signed another bill into law, putting hotline information on student ID cards, so that it's easily accessible for young people. So hotline information and something that was mentioned at the beginning of this webinar. So that will be, on their student IDs. And a lot of it has to do with State Representative Joan Ballweg and a bipartisan task force on suicide prevention. And they worked with us and our documentary and our young people and helped get that done.
Thank you both so much. And that just shows the profound impact of your film. For those listening in, if you have any questions for Scotty or Maryann, feel free to add them to the chat and we can address them towards the end during the Q&A. Next, I'd like to invite Meghan to introduce us to the National Alliance for Mental Illness Wisconsin and introduce a couple of their incredible resources on mental health. Meghan, take it away.
Okay, I turned on my video just for a minute to say hello to everybody live, and then I will go ahead and mute it or stop my video because I know that's interfering with speed. So I'm Meghan McLachlan, and I'm actually with 2 NAMIs. I'm a parent peer advocate in Appleton for the Neenah School District, but with the NAMI Fox Valley. And then in Madison, I'm the state program coordinator. And I just want to tell you guys a little bit about NAMI. Next slide, please. So NAMI is a national organization, and it started in Madison. It started in Madison in 1977 by 2 moms that both had sons with schizophrenia, and they were feeling like people were not seeing their sons and really just seeing the illness. So they started NAMI, and it has now grown to, here in Wisconsin, we have 1,800 members. We have 28 affiliates. They're a variety. Like I said, I'm at NAMI Fox Valley as well as NAMI Wisconsin. Some of the affiliates are larger, like Fox Valley, Dane, Waukesha. Some are smaller, just being run by volunteers. But worldwide, it has 11 million members, and some of the programs have been translated into 8 different languages. Next. Here is a definition of mental illness that we use and that we like, that's out of the National Institute of Mental Health. I like this one. One thing that when I started working for NAMI, I came from an education background. And when I started working for NAMI about 6, 7 years ago now, one thing that surprised me was that ADHD was considered a mental illness. But if you look at this definition too, yeah, it does. It disrupts a person's thinking, feeling, mood, behavior, and ability to relate to others, and causes difficulty in their daily functioning. So I always think that I like to go back to this definition when I'm thinking about what is a mental illness, right? Next, please. And here's some information about stigma. And it's having a view of a person in a negative way. And I always like to go back to those original women who started NAMI. We call them our NAMI mommies. And so they really felt like this was interfering with their sons. And then it leads to isolation, and it leads to poor outcomes. And so it really is a vicious circle. And stigma is a reason half the people who get diagnosed with mental illness do not get help. And so it's really something that at NAMI we're fighting every day. All right.
Mental health conditions are more common than you may think. 1 in 5 youth or young adults lives with a mental health condition. Do you know the warning signs? Like feeling sad or withdrawn for more than 2 weeks. Severe mood swings that cause problems in relationships. Intense worries or fears that get in the way of daily activities. Sudden overwhelming fear for no reason. Or seriously trying to harm or kill oneself, or making plans to do so. Not eating, throwing up, or using laxatives to lose weight. Significant weight loss or weight gain. Severe, out-of-control risk-taking behavior that can cause harm to self or others. Repeated use of drugs or alcohol. Drastic changes in behavior, personality, or sleeping habits. Or extreme difficulty concentrating or staying still. If you see these signs in yourself or a friend, tell a trusted.
Okay, go to the next slide.
Hey, Megan.
Yeah.
This is Kristen. Before you go to the next slide, could you please go back to the definition? We've had a request for that, and I'd rather not get too far ahead. Thank you.
And is this something, Kristen, you could, we could type in the chat, or we could capture and send it out to people who are, how could we share this?
Muna, could you copy and paste this into the chat?
I can't at this time, but I will definitely share it in the post-event email.
Perfect.
Good, thank you. So that was just, that video just showed you the 10 signs of mental illness to be aware of. And that video goes on to have a discussion with those 3 students. And this is something that's available for you guys too as a resource. And you can just reach out to me. I added my email into the chat, and Mona will make sure that she shares that too. So I'm just going to cover, I just have a couple minutes, but I wanted to talk about a couple resources here that we have at NAMI. One is something that we created here at NAMI, Wisconsin. It's a toolkit. It's actually to create a club, sort of like the club we saw just briefly in the You Are Not Alone documentary, having kids talk about mental health. So it is the video that you saw is a discussion guide, and this is a great resource. Please feel free to use this. Okay, next one. And then NAMI Basics on Demand. This is a class that we have seen sort of go through the roof. It's a class you take at your own speed. You sign up, it's free. You can take it whenever you have the chance to take it. It's for parents or caregivers with school-age kids. This says 22 or younger, but most of the people in there, their kids are still in school. It is an amazing, it's an amazing class, and you're going to have time to share. You're going to learn about what mental illness looks like. You're going to talk about the brain, about medications, about a crisis plan, about how to talk to your loved one. Before COVID started, NAMI National had about 30 people a day signing up for this class, and they have about 400 people a day signing up to take NAMI Basics on Demand. And one thing that's happened here in Wisconsin is NAMI Dane decided that they wanted to offer it and have the people take the class on their own time and then have a support group. And so that support group decided when they were going to meet, and they decided to meet Sunday mornings. So they're meeting Sunday mornings from 10 to 12, which before this time we would never have included a support group at a time like that, but that's what worked for these parents. And then they're continuing the conversation. They're being introduced to some local resources, and then they're going to be able to support each other as well through this process and this journey that, you know, is a lifelong journey. So this has been an amazing resource. So please tell anyone you know about NAMI Basics on Demand.
Thank you so much for sharing, Meghan. For those of you who would like to reach out to Meghan, she'll put her email in the chat box. We are now going to hear from Kim Ryan, who is the Director of Special Education and a teacher at One City Early Learning Schools here in Madison, Wisconsin. And she's going to share some ways that she's been connecting with families from a distance. Take it away, Kim.
Thanks, Mona. Hi, everybody. Well, I just wanted to take the video on and just say hi to everybody. Hope you all are doing well and staying healthy and safe. What I really want to talk about today is just what we're doing at our school, One City. We service kiddos who are in preschool and early elementary. And we're just really realizing the importance of focusing on student social emotional skills, especially during this time of COVID. So we know that right now this time is such a stressful time for students. But how is this really affecting students? Well, from an education standpoint, their way of learning has done a complete 180-degree turn. And I think probably the biggest thing is they can't see their teachers and they can't see their friends. And it's, I think, it's hard, especially for the younger kiddos, to really understand what's going on. Why can't they go to school? Why can't they see their friends? They're learning from home, which for them is just such an unconventional way for learning. Usually during summer, they're at home and they get to run around and play. And here now the expectation is that they're sitting down and learning. They're used to having a teacher, and now their parents are being their teachers, which is very different for them. And just in general, there's just such minimal interaction with people, which is challenging for them. And they just feel like they're stuck at home. They can't do much, they're just stuck. So I think the other important thing, though, to recognize is that many kids are picking up on the feeling, and that stress that their parents might be feeling right now. And, even some of their caregivers or parents might be at a heightened state of feeling stressed and maybe experiencing mental health issues that either they had prior to this whole COVID thing and now are at a heightened state, or some of these parents might be just now experiencing some new mental health issues during this COVID, just because of all the stress that they're feeling. So something that we're doing at One City to help just connect with students from an educational standpoint, we're sending learning packets and activities home for students to work on. We are making sure we're doing weekly Zoom calls for reading and math instruction. We also have put together online lessons through PowerPoints to help guide parents through some of the learning, since this is a stressful time. I've heard a number of times myself, parents say, I'm not educated for this. I don't know how to teach. I'm not a teacher, which is just causing stress for those parents. Our preschool, they're actually doing weekly Zoom times with their entire class. And then the other thing we're doing is we have weekly Zoom options, social options. We have something every day for the students to be able to participate in, particularly to see their peers. So we do have virtual Girl Scouts, and we call Boys to Men, which is similar to a Boy Scouts. On Tuesday, we do PBS Kids Science Lab with Miss Muna. On Wednesday mornings, we do our morning meeting. We call them crew, but just that time to check in and interact with each other. We have fitness on Thursdays, and then show and tell on Fridays. So again, we really wanted to figure out how we could keep that social component for the kiddos on a daily basis on top of the learning and academics that they're doing. What I'm doing personally to students, I make sure that I Zoom with the students at least every week, if not more. If parents aren't real tech savvy, I might FaceTime with them, call them, just any way to try and reach out to the students to know that I'm still there for them. And then I also provide the Zoom calls or FaceTime calls to help focus on their IEP goals and provide some of those lessons. And then in addition, I want them to see me. I want them to know that I'm there for them. So I also participate in most of the social events that we do throughout the week. So we talk about the students and how stressful it is for the students, but we also, I think, need to recognize just the stress that it is on our parents. And, some of our parents are experiencing just so much, I think, during this time. From some have lost their job. Some are working from home and they're trying to figure out and manage that home work-life balance. They have to educate their kids, which is just not something many parents are comfortable with doing. There's a lot of parents who are worrying about their child academically. Are they progressing? What's going to happen if they don't make progress? I've had parents ask me if their child was going to have to repeat this past year's grade. So there's just a lot of worry and concern on the parents' part. Other things we're coming across, and I know other districts are too, of does each student have technology or internet access? Parents are being stressed just with various financial obligations. Another thing is just feeling very isolated. They can't go out, they can't do much, they can't really see people. So it's just a stressful, lonely time for some people. And then just overall managing the stress and anxiety. And when these families are feeling this stress and they're doing their absolute very best, but our kids are able to pick up on that, that stressful energy that the parents are giving off. So it is impacting kiddos.
Documentary that PBS did
to an extent.
on
So, having said all of that, we'll go to the next slide.
peer conversation.
Mona, could you move to the next slide? There we go. Thank you. So what are we doing to help? Because we feel it's important, obviously, to interact with people so that the families feel like they can provide what their child needs. So at One City, we do Friday night social hours, and it's at 9 o'clock at night. And it's just for the parents. We did it late at night in hopes that the kids are in bed and the parents can just take a minute to take a deep breath and then interact virtually with other adults. So that's one thing we do. We hold parent meetings on a relatively regular basis, and that is more for if parents have questions about academics or just any questions in general, but it just gives them an outlet to and an opportunity to be able to ask those questions. We do phone calls, texts, emails. The other thing we do is we have a family needs survey that we send out frequently. And that lets us know where parents and families are struggling. With that family needs assessment survey, we are able to then, through our COVID fund that we have developed at One City, we've been able to help provide rent assistance, provided technology, iPads, Chromebooks for students. Parents who need childcare funding, we've been able to help with that. If parents have lost jobs, we've been able to help with groceries. And that people have really just donated from the community to this fund. So it has just been fantastic, but we were just looking for a way to be able to help our families just feel a little less stressed. The other thing, another big project though that we've been doing is we've been working with Dr. Lynn McDonald, who is a social worker. She's a distinguished professor and researcher from UW-Madison. She was also the founder of the FAST program, Families and Schools Together. We've been working with her, and at One City we developed a team, and we called it Parents Are Heroes. We realized that a lot of the medical professionals have been getting a lot of accolades, and rightfully so. They're right on that front line. And even maybe educators are saying, oh, the educators are working so hard. But what we wanted to recognize is that the parents are also really true heroes. They are just living day in and day out and just kind of trying to get by, being a mom, being a teacher, being the financial supporter, whatnot. So we started this group of Parents Are Heroes. And the whole point of that is Dr. McDonald shared with us that with the stay-at-home order, the potential for domestic abuse and domestic violence has the potential to increase significantly. So we wanted to figure out what we could do to help with this. She said the two things that really kind of the equation for domestic abuse and domestic violence are people feeling very isolated, and then also just people who are under extreme stress, which we know people are right now with with COVID and the stay-at-home order. Many people are feeling both of those. So what Dr. McDonald had suggested is that each person, each primary caregiver, needs to talk with somebody on a daily basis for at least 15 minutes. And the purpose of this is just to make sure that each person has an outlet to be able to express how they're feeling. And, how was Johnny doing today? Oh, he was driving me crazy. Just is giving that opportunity to be able to share that information. And by being able to do that, it actually decreases the chances or the potential for domestic abuse and domestic violence. And even the same, for domestic violence, with parents and caregivers with each other. So we have been doing that. We put the plan in place, and again, through that needs survey, we've been able to, and just talking with parents, figure out who just needs that phone call every day. And as far as talking with somebody every day, it could be somebody that they know, or it could be a staff member from One City that makes that phone call every day. But just the importance of being able to check in on our families and our caregivers. And then, so for me, connecting with parents, I find that it's so important for me to be able to connect with them. So I connect with families just on a weekly basis, whether I do it through email, text, phone calls. If I Zoom call with their child, I might just check in and say, hey, how are you feeling? Or how are you doing? Just so that they know that I am there for them. And I have even done Zoom calls with just families just to sit and talk with them. So those are just some things that I'm personally doing during this time for parents. And then, I think the other thing that is overlooked is the stress that we have as educators in our life, and just even working people in general. We're working from home. We're learning how to teach in a new way, this virtual. We're maneuvering through just various forms of technology. I had never heard of Zoom prior to this, and here I'm Zooming multiple times a day. We're making sure families have all the materials and lessons that they need. And then some of us are parents too, so we're juggling teaching our own kids from home and then teaching our school kids. So I just want to acknowledge and express that you're doing a good job, and just to make sure that you are taking care of yourselves as well, because that is so very important. So that's what I have. I really just wanted to share just how all the different factors of working with the students, working with the families, and then taking care of ourselves as educators is all just so important. There are probably some people right now in this world who have never experienced mental I think there are more people who are experiencing, particularly depression and anxiety. I think some of these feelings can be very similar for people. And then those who have had mental health concerns prior to this, they could be experiencing these mental health issues at a heightened state. And it's just something we take care of.
Kim, we can't hear you.
And our coworkers, checking in on our neighbors.
There we go. Now we can hear you. You just kind of cut out when you started this slide. But
well, the whole point is just making sure we're checking in on each other and taking care of each other, because that's such an important part, I think, during this time of isolation in particular. So thanks so much for listening to what I have to say, and I hope everybody is staying healthy and well.
Thank you so much, Kim, for being here today.
Kim, I have a couple questions for you.
Okay.
Sarah would like to know, how large is One City Schools?
So One City is definitely a smaller district. We have preschool through first grade currently, and next year we'll have second grade. So we are just the lower elementary.
Another question for you, Kim, is would you be willing to share the family survey needs assessment?
Yes, let me look into that, and I can definitely get it and send it out. That's a great idea.
Kim, if you get that to Muna, we'll include it in the post-event webinar. Another question for you, Kim. How do you reach students who don't have internet access for Zoom?
That is such a good question, and I've actually found myself commenting to people. Can you imagine having this time of the COVID and not having the technology that we have? So what we have done is, I've done things like FaceTime, if they can't do Zoom, if they don't have FaceTime, I've just gotten on the phone and called. We also are making sure that we drop off activities for the families, or we do like a curbside pickup just of a bunch of activities. So, I think if we can't do it through Zoom or through FaceTime, I think it's just picking up the phone and just making that kind of connection with the students is just another way that we do it. But we've also been just working really hard at getting technology to the students so that they do have access to Zoom, FaceTime, whatever.
I have another question. How do we best prepare for fall? when the children and families, when they come back to school living through this pandemic. I teach first, second, and third graders. Again, the question is, how do we best prepare for fall when the children and families, when they come back to school living through this pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I think just, having that compassion and being able to have some of those discussions. How are you feeling during that time? During a morning meeting, I think is giving the students opportunities to talk about their experiences would be something I envision doing when we get back to school. And the other thing I find myself thinking too is, will we be facing this even again sometime next year, whether it's in fall or, will there be kind of a COVID explosion again at some point next year? So we may be facing this all again. So I think just preparing students even from that avenue of this could happen again and we're going to work through this. But I think just talking about it and just giving them an avenue to share how they felt during the time and that it's going to be okay.
And McNeil, watch the PBS Wisconsin Education.org website. We will be having at-home summer learning activities, resources. We are working closely with the Department of Public Instruction on that right now.
Thank you so much for sharing, Kim. I think it's so important to practice that compassion, and I agree wholeheartedly that it's critical to have those conversations with our students. I know we're getting close to the end of time, so I'm just gonna share a few PBS resources on youth mental health that you can all use to learn more about youth mental health or foster dialogue related to youth mental health with your students. And the first is a collection on PBS Learning Media, which contains resources for grades pre-K through 12. You will not only find videos and interactives, but you'll find lesson plans that are ready to use and additional resources on a variety of topics from sexual health and substance misuse to safety and relationships. PBS Learning Media even allows you to filter content to specific grades and even specific types of media. So for educators looking for a place to start with a variety of resources related to mental health, I highly recommend starting here. And with all of the few different resources that I'm going to mention, my colleague Kristen will put them in the chat and we will send them with the post-event email. So you will have access to these links. As you already know, as we've discussed, there are some different documentaries at your disposal that explore youth who have survived sexual, domestic, or emotional abuse, poverty, bullying, racial stereotypes, and mental illnesses. And many of these different documentaries include these shortened video clips that you can adapt into your lessons. Some of them even come with lesson plans, and many are aligned and connected to standards. And again, you can find these using this PBS Learning Media collection. They'll have some of those clips there and some of those lesson plans ready for you to go. And I also just wanted to mention that PBS Wisconsin released a documentary called Not Enough Apologies, Trauma Stories, which is also from, it offers a youth perspective, but also a policy perspective on trauma-informed care in Wisconsin. And I highly recommend checking out our website. Kristen will drop the link, and that also has a discussion guide for talking about trauma in Wisconsin and what it looks like to respond to students who might be dealing with trauma. And then I wanted to share a few resources that are social and emotional learning resources, especially for those early learners. One of which, this is one of my favorite websites, it's Sesame Street in Communities. And what you can find is a hub of resources that deal with real life issues that children face, from divorce to family homelessness to the others that are listed here, such as exploring emotions, caring for each other, resilience, traumatic experiences. You'll find the example that I have a screenshot of is from emergencies. And so you can see different printables and videos and even a workshop preparation such as making a family emergency plan, self-care during and after a crisis, and a video for offering comfort in stressful times. These are curated and creative for those early learners in mind, and is a great place to start when you have a difficult topic that you want to bring up or discuss, either with your students or your parents, but you're not exactly sure how to go about that. I highly recommend checking out Sesame Street and Communities. PBS Kids also offers a wonderful resource called Helping Children Become Resilient with Arthur. And what I love about this collection is that it not only has tips for kids, like you can see there, but it also has a guide for parents, right? How do you manage your own feelings as a grown-up? And then there are also a teacher's guide. So you'll also find courage cards and discussion questions for different episodes. So a way to really engage with young learners, but through media that they are comfortable with or what might bring them comfort. And then lastly, I wanted to share about kindness in the classroom. PBS Wisconsin collaborated with the Center for Healthy Minds in creating different videos, such as tips and tricks for incorporating this curriculum into your classroom, or even guided meditation. And if you visit our website, you'll find the free 24-lesson guide incorporating different types of social and emotional learning skills with your pre-K and kindergarten students. And it really just helps them to attend their emotions, self-regulate, and learn different skills to care for themselves and for others. So I just want to use what time we have left, and if we go over, that's perfectly fine. If you can stay on, then that's great, to really answer some more questions that you might have for any of us here on the call. We are resources for you, and we want to be able to support you as best we can. So now is really a time for you to heat up that chat box and ask any questions that you have so that me or any of the other presenters can offer some support.
Muna, Maria has a question for you. She would like to know if any of the resources are in Spanish. And that could be a question for Meghan too.
Yes, that is a really wonderful question. What I love about PBS Learning Media is that a lot of the resources that you can find, you can even filter it and say that you're looking for specific Spanish-only resources. And so I recommend that you check out PBS Learning Media, and when you're searching for maybe it's social and emotional learning videos or lesson plans, you'll take a look at the hand side of the filters, and you can see, you can select different language and different media and different grade types there.
Another question was, will we receive a certificate of attendance? Yes, you will receive a certificate of attendance. Muna will be sending out a post-event email.
If you would like a certificate of attendance, please add your name and your email, and we'll make sure that we get you a certificate of attendance in the chat box.
And you know what, Muna, we have I think almost everybody that registered is on this webinar. I think we can just send it to everyone.
Okay. That sounds like a plan.
Another question, do you think DPI will begin to mandate teacher training in youth mental health? It should be a part of our mandated back to school training, just like how we have to revisit the bloodborne pathogen videos annually as educators. I can't speak to what DPI is doing, but I certainly can tell them how engaged this audience was with this content. I did like that you mentioned bloodborne pathogens. I have to say that our school nurse in Lancaster, Wisconsin always did an awesome job presenting that. Another question from Elizabeth. Was this recorded in a way that others will be able to view later? Yes, this is available, and Muna, will you type in the URL? It is pbswisconsineducation.org/events. and that's where the recording will live. We will also send a post-event email with that link. Lots of thank yous for sharing, very informative. The comments are scrolling by faster than I can read. It needs to stay fresh in everyone's mind. Time well spent. If I didn't read your question to the panel, would you type it again?
Thank you so much for coming today and being a part of this webinar.
Is NAMI in every state? A question for you, Megan.
Yes, NAMI's in every state, and there's 1,100 affiliates in the United States. So it's kind of hard to wrap your head around sometimes, and NAMI Minnesota operates very differently. They don't have the affiliates, but they all do it out of a general office. And we share resources too. We share trainings with NAMI Illinois, NAMI Iowa, NAMI Minnesota. So it's all over the place, and it's yeah, like I said, it's 11 million members. It's in South America. We just translated the Family to Family program is in Italian, and it's kind of amazing how far spread it is and how it's grown. And so it is hard too to say, because some affiliates, like I was having a conversation with someone in Lincoln County. Some counties have very small affiliates, like I said, with a lot less going on. But that's the beauty of some of this stuff that's coming out of COVID, is some of the programs we're doing are going to be available in some of the communities where it is hard to get to a class, or that it's just too far away. You know, we'll maybe be offering more in the winter when it's hard to drive and get to trainings. So I think there's definitely a silver lining for a lot of this in the NAMI world.
Thank you for sharing that, Megan. There was a request for Kids in Crisis for a broadcast schedule for Green Bay. At this point, there isn't, that episode is not going to be broadcast. However, Linda Ferguson just put the link in the chat. So thank you, Linda. Oh, I'm sorry, that Linda put "You Are Not Alone" from PBS Learning Media in the chat, which is a fantastic resource. I will retype the Kids in Crisis URL.
And this is Maryann. You can also just go to YouTube as well and type in Milwaukee PBS Kids in Crisis, but certainly online at milwaukeepbs.org. /Kids in Crisis. We are re-airing it in Milwaukee on the 21st of May at 7:30. If you're a PBS station and you want to air it, NETA is the one to contact. They have it. They have the freshest version that we have, which is airing this month.
Well, with that, thank you for your comment, Jasmine, and thank you all so much for coming today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and stay up to date on future events, resources, and our projects by joining our newsletter at pbswisconsineducation.org.